Serial entrepreneurs play a significant role in driving economic growth, with estimates from Shopify suggesting that they generate approximately 67% higher revenue sales and disproportionately boosting growth, despite the fact that they only make up approximately 3.5% of business owners. Meanwhile, small business growth and small business owners is booming in America today, with more than 5.2 million new small business applications in 2024, with non-employer revenue hovering around $58,000 and millions of one-person businesses hitting over the $1 million mark, showing a varied way of generating revenue in the business landscape. Meanwhile, my friends over at LinkedIn report that global e-commerce sales are expected to hit an estimated $6.86 trillion in 2025. For my friend Paul Shrater, he knows a thing or two about how to succeed in the e-commerce world of business. He currently owns or operates a total of 12 businesses. As a serial entrepreneur, Shrater has a wealth of experience owning businesses in a variety of industries, including contract fulfillment, food and beverage, beauty, food service, and distribution, just to name a few. Shrater says that the future of e-commerce is bright. Shrater is also a graduate of the acclaimed Wharton School of Business. He's a speaker for national conferences in the area of e-commerce and has made several national media appearances. And Shrater joined me this week to discuss the future of e-commerce and where he gets his business innovation from. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Ready? I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn about your background in entrepreneurship and how you're making a difference in the world of business, my friend. Great to see you, and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Yes, yeah, thank you. It's great to be on.
Absolutely. Now, Paul, I know that you've either owned or operated a total of 12 different businesses in a variety of different industries, my friends. I wanted to begin by asking you about business diversification and how your business ambition has led to your success, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
So the classic business school sort of teaching is to go deep and focus on one thing and do it really well. Sometimes the challenge, I think, and the changing environment of business over recent times is that things are moving very quickly and changing with what's happening in the business world. I mean, e-commerce is not that old and continues to evolve. So for us, we launched an e-commerce business 21 years ago. Before Amazon became Amazon, but then Amazon became Amazon, and that, having the e-commerce business led us into contract packaging in food, beauty, supplements, personal care, because I saw a need, again, in the industry of people who need a scaling facility, because all of a sudden, pre-internet, You had to have serious capital to be an entrepreneur and launch a business, and these factories all had million-piece minimums. Now it's easier and cheaper to be an entrepreneur, so you need a facility that can start with small minimum runs and take you larger. That led into, since we already were doing e-commerce, doing fulfillment for those brands as well, because we were doing fulfillment for ourselves. And that, again, was a business that hadn't yet transformed based on the change that was happening in business with e-commerce, where it used to be pallets coming in of goods and pallets going out to a retailer. And now all of a sudden, you got to do pick and pack and talk to your client every day and do customer service out to the public. And those, companies weren't used to doing that. And that's a big mental shift in how you structure and how you execute on your business. And we had already built that model for ourselves. So doing it for others became a natural fit. And then adding other businesses continued to kind of build off of opportunities, and really seeing, for me, I love businesses that capture societal changes and getting in sort of early to solve those problems and capture that opportunity. But they're all things that fit together. And work together, so we can have a customer with 3 or 4 of our different companies because we're helping them, solve different aspects of what it is they're doing. So that it's not like I'm going off and opening a restaurant or something. That's something that's completely different. They're all synergistic together, so they're really a part of a singular ecosystem in a way.
Yeah, and Paul, you brought up something I wanted to dive deeper in on your first answer. When you said that you're interested in businesses that capture societal change, so I'm curious, what role do you think businesses have, or business owners or entrepreneurs have, in capturing societal change through their business? What are your thoughts then?
Well, I always love the sort of classic business teachings that if there's an opportunity, there's entrepreneurs there to fill it. Like, it will happen. They will figure it out. They'll, just because we have such a large system of people, that anytime there's a need, it will be filled by people who figure it out. Now, they may fill it, not completely efficiently, and then the second player who comes in does it better and all that. But I think the role of entrepreneurs is spotting those things and coming in and adapting or building businesses or solving those problems as society continues to change. And we're seeing, a massive change very recently. When you look at, sort of history and time, things are happening faster now. I mean, there's that whole thing of computer chips and the escalation of, the speed in which they, processing power and all that, gets faster and faster over a shorter and shorter period of time. The same thing's happening with what's going on with business. We went from a social media, revolution into what's now becoming social commerce is some of the next big thing with things like TikTok Shop and all that. That's one of the next biggest moves. AI, whether you understand it or like it or not, is a massive shift that in different ways, some ways we haven't even seen yet, is going to start affecting business and consumers and their behaviors too as time goes on, is even within the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've shipped a fruitcake into space, my friend, and I'm curious about how that experience impacted you. Anytime you can ship anything into space, it takes a lot of ingenuity and thought to it, my friend. And how does that experience sort of contribute to your business ambition? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So I think it's a quick story I'll get into, but what it exemplifies is this attitude of problem solving and going and tackling things and trying to figure them out. And so we, early on, this was 20 years ago, my customer service person came to me and said, "Oh, I've got NASA on the phone. They've been buying product off our website, and one of the products is out of stock, and I offered them a substitution." It was Subi honey packets, little single-use packets of honey from the Subi brand. and we were trying to substitute a different brand of honey packet that we were carrying. And they said, we'd already tested that other one in our food lab. We don't have time to test a new brand. What can we do? And I'm like, wait a minute, NASA's been buying on our website, and we saw they had been putting in orders for little condiment packets that have been going up to the space station for a while. And so I said, let's get them off the website, talk to our wholesale department, so we'll have a rep to talk to, and let me talk to them right now. And we ended up calling the Subi company. They FedEx overnighted a case of honey right to NASA so it could go up into space. And we did press releases with Heinz and CEO of Heinz and all that too with some of the stuff we were doing. But a while later, the person at the food lab, since I'd had that introductory call with them, called me and said, hey, we've got a problem. We've got an astronaut who wants fruitcake for the holidays up on the space station. They get to pick an item of like their own personal choosing outside of the meal program. And they said, the problem is we're a government agency and rum is used in fruitcake to preserve it. So we need to find a fruitcake made without rum but also as preserved, because at the time, and making fruitcake without rum but still preserved, for a long time. And so they sent over some fruitcake to the NASA. They tested it at the lab, went up to space. Astronaut emails the monks thanking them for the delicious fruitcake, and they got excited. And I got them connected to NASA's PR office so they could use it. And then 2 years later, the astronaut went up again and wanted his fruitcake, and then the monks charged me, $65 this time for the fruitcake, so or whatever it was. So I've shipped fruitcake into space twice for an astronaut, but it was sort of a lesson in thinking outside the box, sourcing, again, solving problems, but on a fun, scale. Again, not a big customer. There's not a lot of astronauts. It's not big dollars or anything, but I think it's a great story that exemplifies, the entrepreneurial attitude to problem solving.
Well, it's an awfully innovative bullet point to put on a resume, isn't it?
Yes, it makes for a good story.
Absolutely. Paul, you brought up the idea of business innovation, and as we record this, it's obviously the last day of the year, and I'm curious to ask you about business innovation and moving or advancing business forward in 2026, and what that means to you, my friend.
Yeah, I think 2026 is going to be a really interesting year. There's been a lot of things teed up in the past year that I think are really going to find their home in 2026. I alluded to it a moment ago with social commerce. I think TikTok Shop is leading the charge, in that space. Live selling is, I think it's over 30% of all e-commerce in China, about to become more than 50% of all e-commerce in China is live selling. It's QVC on your cell phone, kind of is how I describe it. And that, I have a TikTok marketing agency with live selling studios in my building here, partnered with an agency that came over from China that TikTok brought over. So we get to kind of be on the inside scoop of what's really going on there. And I think that we're still at the early stages of that. And one of the interesting things that's about to happen is China's 5 years ahead of us in live selling in social commerce. And so their populace is used to the methodologies that have developed over 5 years, which is sell, products, attributes, price. Also in China, they're not as into brands and brand identity as we are here in the United States. So it is more about the functionality and features of a product and price than it is about the perceived value of a brand. And the US market being brand new to this social commerce, if you try and use those same tactics, which is what's happened, if you're on TikTok, you see a lot of hard selling and people, really fast, boom, 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 boom. We as consumers, we don't go on social media or TikTok to be hard sold, products and attributes. We want to be entertained. So I think some of the trick of that is going to happen over this next year is being able to blend entertainment with the social commerce and with the live selling, and have more emotional connection with the people that are talking about the products, and creating more of a produced show, if you will, versus just sell. So I think we're going to see some sort of blending of those two ways of thinking to help better connect with the U.S. consumer in that space. So That I also, obviously AI is a huge thing. I think we're going to see that sort of shake itself out. There's going to be things that move big in one direction. There's going to be, retractions. If you look at the younger generation, like my teenage kids, they're very anti-AI. Anything having to do with AI, don't even want to see it, touch it, look at it, hear it, whether it's music or advertising or funny videos or whatever. They don't want it. They want authenticity. So there's also a generation gap that I think is going to evolve in terms of how to service those desires of the different generations. Some are okay with AI, some are not. So you're going to start to have things that be forced to identify as being AI generated, and those that will gain a certain audience and value because they're specifically identified as not being connected to AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Paul, as you know, for any small and medium-sized business to grow, the adoption or the acceptance of, e-commerce and selling on the internet is the wave of the future, my friend. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this 2024 business survey from Statista that reported that 65% of American small and medium-sized enterprises or businesses anticipate that their e-commerce growth sales is going to be a major driver of their business and revenue moving forward. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on those findings and what it means for the future of small and medium-sized businesses, my friend.
Well, I think we're in the middle of a massive shift. As when I was younger, there wasn't such a thing as e-commerce. You went to retail stores for everything. You went to the malls for everything. And if you look around in your neighborhood, doesn't matter where you are, retail is dying everywhere. But certain ones are surviving. And then you ask the question, why? What about certain products do people want to touch, feel? Like there's a product line we were working with as a client, and it has a higher price point than its competitor, but it's a premium product. Well, how do you know that it's premium unless you try it? So you need a physical ability to try that product. And I think we're going to see a lot more of physical brick and mortar retail being more experiential. I think you're going to see malls, and you're starting to see that where people still want to get out, they want to socialize, they want to have a place to go, they want to be cooped up in their house all day. So creating interesting destinations and reasons for someone to go somewhere. And you could also shop and buy things at those places, but finding a way to create experiences within just a retail shopping environment, that I think is going to be a shift that we see in brick and mortar retail. But for everything else, it's just going to become more and more e-commerce, and again, more entertainment value. I think in the marketing of that e-commerce again is, it used to be TV commercials were just, here's my product and here's its features. Nobody cares. They want an emotional connection. I think social media has sort of started to massively shift the age-old thinking about marketing, and really people are getting more clever with storytelling and figuring out how to emotionally connect to a consumer beyond the features. And I think that's another big shift that we'll see with social media, social commerce, is storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Inc.com also released a study and a survey that this year that 73% of e-commerce business owners are becoming more profitable as compared to 64% of brick and mortar business owners. And I'm curious, why do you think e-commerce businesses are becoming more profitable? And obviously, do you think that trend will continue? And where do you see e-commerce profitability going? And how do we make sure that the business community is smart and leveraging e-commerce to make profits? What are your thoughts there?
Well, some of the obvious aspects is with brick and mortar, you have to have, high priced rent. You have to have staff that works there. You have to hold your inventory there. It's more limited space to hold inventory. There's a lot of aspects of retail that when you're in e-commerce, you could be at home, you could be in an office building, you hire a 3PL, third-party logistics company like ours, to do your, shipping and fulfillment. You never have to see the product, touch the product. You pay for its storage and its pick and pack, most of which comes out of the sales that you do, not the storage piece, but the variable cost of when it sells is when you pay for the order to be processed. So the cost factor to do e-commerce from an operational side is way more efficient than retail in general. One of the hard parts, I should say, about e-commerce is the ever-evolving change of where you get your eyeballs. Where do your customers come from? How do you market to them? And where are those value propositions that get you the most bang for your buck, whether it's advertising or whatnot? And that continues to change every year, every 6 months even. And so it's very hard, and businesses can struggle if they don't move along with that. And 2023, coming out of the pandemic, you had a lot of brick and mortar stores, and this is a story that hasn't really been told as much, I think, as it should. You had a lot of brick and mortar stores, big companies who didn't have consumers walking in because it was the pandemic. They couldn't. So they took all their budgets to shift their business and put it into advertising on Facebook and Instagram, which is where all the online advertising was going at the time, to get people to come to their e-commerce store in order to kind of still make revenue as a company. That, you have the same number of consumers, but more dollars being spent to get those eyeballs, which means your price goes way up. At the same time, Apple allows you to opt out of sharing your data. Now, every time you download an app, it asks, are you willing to share your data? And most people say no. And so the advertiser then, when they spend on there, means they don't have access to the deeper detail of the data. So the cost to reach a customer, you have to go to a broader set of customers, not a narrow one who's very specific to being interested in your product. So you're spending a lot more money to get less customers, meaning the cost to acquire that customer might go from $10 to something like $40. And if you have a $40 product, you can't afford $40 to get a customer. So that was a big blow to a lot of the e-commerce, small and even to some degree certain medium-sized businesses in that space. A lot of businesses went under, can't pay their bills, suffer. I mean, we saw it with our business and our clients. I think now we're just coming out of that. And I think one of the places that businesses can find the best value now is actually on TikTok Shop. Part of the reason is not only is it's this great ecosystem that is getting a lot of audience now, but the algorithm of TikTok does the work for you to find that right customer. You don't have to pick all these attributes to try and guess and hit that right customer. Now you can't even pick that detailed of attributes to do it on other platforms. But TikTok, if you create a good piece of entertaining content, it can't just be here's my product and its price and all that. The algorithm will test out who the most likely person is. It might take 3 months for the algorithm to figure out who your exact customer is, but once it does, every one of those customers who's exactly like your customer base will see your product for free. The power of that, again, has yet to really be understood by a lot of the business community and adapt and get onto TikTok Shop and do that. So that was part of my excitement to partner up and work on a TikTok agency, because I see that as the next value proposition in the short term.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I'm curious from an overall entrepreneurial perspective, how do you view the concept of being innovative or having entrepreneurial ingenuity? My friend, what does entrepreneurial ingenuity mean to you?
Well, there's the sense of an entrepreneur and ingenuity, and there's a sense of, I'll call it more like product ingenuity and innovation. So to me, people ask the question, is an entrepreneur born or made? Can someone learn to be an entrepreneur? And I said, usually the test that I use is an entrepreneur is fulfilled and excited by the process and by building something, by solving things. It's not about the money. I call that the MBA mentality, not to diss MBAs, but that tends to be more about what's the valuation and what am I going to sell my company for and flip it and what's my comp package. And like it's a whole different mindset than enjoying the execution, enjoying the building and the problem solving and being that operator. That to me is where it's okay to be a different type of, you can be a financial entrepreneur who loves to invest in businesses and grow them and sell them, like that's a different level. It's more of a financial entrepreneur than an operational, sort of entrepreneur who, from the classic sense of, starting it something or coming in and shaping it and building it. So that I think is a mindset of sort of innovation and problem solving and all that. From a product standpoint and what that entrepreneur is then doing and making, I actually think we're living in an age where innovation is becoming more valued than it ever has been. Because if you look at like when I was younger and going, to business college and all that, it was all about, there are brands that families buy their entire lives. You buy Crest toothpaste your entire life. You buy Tide detergent your entire life. And so the literature and the mindset back then was people lock into brands for a really long period of time. That has shifted so quickly in a very short period of time to where people want to try new things all the time. They want, what's the most cutting edge? What's the most innovative? What's the most fun new thing? Oh, this has protein in it or probiotics or this or that. There's new innovations coming out, and that has become more valued, I think, than ever before. Back then, innovation was like, oh, what is that? Like I've got my brand that I like, that's my thing. Now it's like, those are boring. What's the latest? So from a brand and product creation perspective, the valuation on innovation, I think, is at a premium right now. So one of the businesses I'm doing is working with high-profile celebrities and creators who want to be entrepreneurs, pairing them with product innovation that I see from my businesses working with food scientists and chemists and material scientists and inventors. So that way, when they launch their business, they're not just white labeling something essentially and selling it to their fan base. They're leveraging their eyeballs and their fan base to a product that is innovative so it can be much more scalable, $50, $100 million kind of a brand. So I think now more than ever, that combination of innovation with the people who people are looking to for where they find their ideas of product is again just at that beginning where all those pieces are coming together. These creators and celebrities are realizing how the power of the audience they have and how to properly put them in the right place to bring them value through product innovation.
Yeah, and Paul, this is partly a selfish question and partly because I'm interested in your answer, But I was born with cerebral palsy, as you know, and when I was 9 years old, my friend, I was told that I would never walk for the duration of my life without assistance. And when I graduated college with a sports journalism degree, and I experienced rejection from 10 consecutive news directors before I pivoted to doing public speaking, because at the time when I graduated college, they viewed my disability as a liability. And I graduated college almost 15 years ago, and sadly, the inclusion or integration of people with disabilities is sorely lacking in today's workforce. Last year, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics reported that only 22.8% of the people who wanted a job who had a disability were able to secure one, compared to nearly 70% of their non-disabled counterparts. So I'm curious about your thoughts on those findings, how we can convince more employers to hire folks with disabilities, and the role entrepreneurship can play in getting more people with disabilities employed. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Great topic. I think there's multiple points to what you're talking about. From a company perspective, companies are motivated generally by two factors: making profit, and generally that's their motivation. Especially public companies are sort of forced to do that on behalf of their shareholders. Sometimes that means doing things for marketing value. So there have been programs and things that have been established to promote support of different programs and things to try, from a social, aspect to support that. There are funds, for hiring disabled workers and support and agencies and things that, do that. But that's the marketing side of it, which to me, I always hate that. I always hate when people sort of do things for, I don't know how sustainable that is in the long term, because there's shifting tides of where consumers, thoughts are and where the value of that marketing is. And if that's the only motivation why a company's doing it, it could be thrown out the window at any moment. But then you look at, the practical value of it. Like, we have an employee here who's developmentally disabled, probably been with us for over 10 years, 100% accurate with everything he does and touches, and like, he's never missed a day, like, always been, and is always thankful, for being like one of the best employees. And we worked with him through a local program that actually has a coach come out, periodically to, check on things, and it's, I think, got funding, to do that. We've worked with an agency that works with developmentally disabled, that they're legally allowed to do things at piece rate, which companies love, because you now have a fixed cost versus not knowing if people are faster or slower that day. Because they tend to be slower in terms of assembly and things like that, they come and time study what the rate should be, and then you pay like a piece rate based on that kind of thing. So from an employer's perspective, it actually is better. Because you have that sort of fixed, price point. So there are programs, some are government supported, some are private supported, that actually encourage and create, from a business practicality element, not just the marketing, side of it, reasons why, it's beneficial for a company to do that. And of course, there's social good and, and aspects that one can personally have as a small business owner based on the owner's like mentality of how they view people and view the world. That's different because that's a personal choice. But from a larger, system of our country, looking at it from a macro sense, I do think there's more of that encouragement, more of those programs from a practical standpoint, probably than when you went to college, versus today, that are better. One of the most fascinating moments I had in this topic recently was a few weeks ago. I was introduced to a food brand run by a young guy who I believe has cerebral palsy, and he's used that platform to go on talk shows and things and talk about his food brand, and it's really taking off into a multi-million-dollar brand. And his business partner mentioned to me, he said, and they've used that aspect very heavily in the marketing. He said, do you understand that disabled people is the largest minority in the country? And I was like, as a customer base, to buy product. And I was like, people have never paid attention. That's never in the discussion of a market and an audience to look at. And I was like, wow, here's somebody who's understood, who's come from that community, built a product for that community. I mean, it's for everybody, but is, because it's front and center, they're tapping into this massive buying power of an audience. And I was like, that is probably a really untapped aspect of business that people haven't paid attention to, is actually paying attention to, an audience like that is looking for people who are paying attention and caring and making product, not for them, but at least acknowledging, that community.
Yeah, and Paul, as a guy, and we just finished the holiday shopping season, I have to be honest with you, Paul. I hate going to the mall, and the Bureau of Labor and Statistics recently reported that more than 20% of our global sort of retail sales in the United States happen through e-commerce, my friend, which achieved record penetration of about 22.7% in 2024, my friend. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the thought that more people are shopping online, and where do you think retail can go moving forward into the future, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think the biggest shift happened when e-commerce is able to deliver things fast. Because there's a lot of time when you want a product, you need it quickly for whatever reason. And the idea that, something like Amazon, you can order in the morning and it's there the same day, or there, I recently my daughter got her hair colored and she's like, "Ah, I need this shampoo," and I go on Amazon. It was there before she woke up in the morning outside my door. And that was in the late afternoon to the early morning. So the ability to even be faster than running out to the store. In that case, stores closed by the time I ordered it and hadn't opened yet by the time it arrived. And so the idea for that's the fact that the speed of shipping shrank so much for many products. It's not for everything, and a lot of mom and pop businesses still don't have the ability to do it that fast. There's a lot of products that people still don't care about, but gone are the days of driving all over town to multiple stores to try and find the product you're looking for, which is what you used to have to do. And the idea of having to go to a store, maybe they don't have what you want or the right size or brand or whatever, and now you can just go online, boom, it's there, and so that has, I think, been a big shift and a reason why a lot of retail has sort of come down. Never mind the cost, where you can make it cheaper by not having to pay for all the retail storefront and staff and all the costs that you have there. You can ship straight from the warehouse. That, as we were talking about earlier, I think the way retail has decided to adapt is either really go deeper on the product categories that people still want to touch and feel and smell and taste and all that. And I think grocery is trying to go more e-commerce, but that's still a place where I think people want to go down the aisles and look at everything and make decisions and look at the fruits and which one they want. So there's still certain areas that I think are valuable for that. There's other ones where oh shoot, it's my kid's birthday. It's going to a birthday party. We got to stop at Target and pick up a gift. Well, you can't do that on e-commerce. So there's still stores and places that need to service immediate needs, convenience stores and things like that. You're driving somewhere and you need a snack or whatever. So there are aspects of retail that it's just going to get more hyper focused, but it's going to leave a lot of real estate open. Things like shopping malls, like you were talking about. Those are going to have to adapt and become more experiential. Again, like we were talking about before, people still want to get out and do stuff. In a weird way, because our society now is boom, 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 fast, fast, fast. Got to always be entertained. Very hard for people to watch a TV show and not also be on their phone at the same time. They're doing two things at once now. So people want to get out more and do stuff. And I think people who can be clever and create fun experiences within a retail environment are going to see huge success. So I think there's concepts that people haven't even figured out yet. And we've started to see some of them. There's there's axe throwing, or there's a trampoline park inside a mall, right? They've started to come up with all these different destination things that people can go to and do stuff. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation still yet to come for different groups. Whether it's kids' birthday parties, whether it's date nights for people, or whether it's adults, wanting to go somewhere and be entertained and do stuff. So I think retail is going to become more destination and entertainment oriented.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on this finding from the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council, who published a report this year that highlighted that e-commerce platforms generate revenue for over 1/5 of all small businesses in America today. And I'm assuming you think that trend will increase. And I'm generally interested in your thoughts on how e-commerce has made the operation of small business and entrepreneurship all that much more easier, my friend. What are your thoughts then?
Well, it's been a night and day shift. When I went to the Wharton School 30 years ago and majored in, or concentration was in entrepreneurial management, that program was in the back corner of the second floor of the building. There's now a 7-story building dedicated solely to entrepreneurship. So the teaching on it, the focus on it has completely changed. And that's because, again, back in those days, to be an entrepreneur, you had to have serious capital to do it. And now with the internet, you can reach a global audience with $20, so the ability to be an entrepreneur has become way easier. Now it's still hard to be successful and execute on that, and sometimes people are shocked when they realize how hard it actually is. It's not just like you put a product on Amazon and people buy it. You have to find it. And that's still the challenge that most people don't realize, is there's so much out there, and there's only a certain number of people with certain eyeballs with a certain amount of time. How do you get your product in front of the right people and their eyeballs to know that you even exist? That continues to be the challenge. And I think the operational infrastructure is great for entrepreneurs now to be able to, put up a Shopify store. You can use templates. You don't even have to know HTML coding like you did back in the day. You drag and drop, boom, boom, put in your banking information. You could be live with a store within a few hours. And be ready to sell. You can be selling other people's products with drop shipping and all that. You don't have to front money to hold inventory. So you can be an entrepreneur within days. You got to do your company and government registrations and sales tax and all that and insurance. But the idea of executing on that has made it more accessible to a lot of people. And so people who have an entrepreneurial mindset now don't have to have had wealthy parents or luck of 1 in a million to do it. They have more ability to put in the effort and the energy and be able to try it and get in and see if they're good at it and see what works and what doesn't work and all that. So I think it's been a huge shift, and I think it continues to change and morph. Mostly in that area of eyeballs. And if you look at, when we were younger, we watched, network television and Saturday morning cartoons and those TV commercials where you learned about product that you were interested in. Now, if you look at kids, where do they learn about product? And if you ask older people, they might be like, what do you mean? Like, they don't even think about that idea. And if you really look at it, they learn about products watching YouTube and TikTok, primarily. And, well, who's the people talking about those products? Well, it's creators, who used to be called influencers, now they're called creators. And, okay, well, if those are the people that have the ability to get their attention for product, what are those people doing about it? And that shift of where the eyeballs are is having a massive change that we're only at the beginning of, that's going to really shape, I think, the way e-commerce moves into social commerce and moves from corporate entities into talent-backed brand entities. I think that's a shift that really we haven't seen at scale before, that's about to be done at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm fascinated to ask you this question about corporate versus entrepreneurial responsibility. And I'm going to frame the question this way. In terms of economic growth and making sure that the economy continues to sort of be vibrant, I'm curious about what is the areas of partnership between corporate America, the government, and entrepreneurs at large that grow the economy? And what sort of responsibilities do you think entrepreneurs should have in investing themselves in the overall growth of the economy? What are your thoughts there?
It's a really interesting question. Might answer it in a slightly different way because I think a smaller entrepreneur doesn't have the ability to impact any of that at scale in terms of economic impact of gross national product or the economy. They're just too small. They can't really do anything unless you're way bigger. But to answer the question a little bit differently, I'm going to say one of the shifts I see happening is those big companies, from the Procter and Gamble to the Pepsi, Frito-Lay, and Sony or where like these huge companies. They're so big that they move very slowly. For them to launch a new brand takes 2 years, and the speed that we were talking about before, by which consumers want to try new things and new trends and all that, those big companies cannot do it in-house because their systems that they've built are such that it's too slow to bring a product to market. So what they've done is they've bought at a premium brands that have peeked through and shown that they're getting traction with this new consumer, that wants to try new things. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a shift there, and that the big companies, instead of trying to build brands completely internally, which is too slow for the change in which consumers now are reacting, they're going to shift into more of an acquisition model, looking at all those entrepreneurs out there, buying their companies at a premium, and then being able to use that portfolio model to expand and get value out of that even further. And the challenge that big companies have is to still allow those companies to do what they're best at and how they reach their customers and adapt and build new brands and product without bringing them into their bloated large system and then basically becoming part of the same issue that they've had, which is the lack of ability to be nimble and adapt quickly. So the success and the shift that will happen is, I think the big companies that are going to survive and thrive are going to be those that can acquire those companies that are nimble and can change quickly, allow them to stay and do what they do best without being sucked into the bloated system, but add the value to them and their overall infrastructure that they have by being so big. By being able to do the things that little company can't do because they're too small and don't have the reach, and leveraging their giant system to be able to extract that value from them. And I think that shift is going to shake itself out over the next several years. I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see that kind of thing morph in terms of how big companies think and the value for an entrepreneur to participate in that. And it's a great time for an entrepreneur because those big companies are going to be looking to acquire you. So you don't have to keep grinding it out, and building it all organically. You have to do that because you have to break through the ceiling of attention for them. So that way they spot you and go, ooh, there's some value here. But you'll be able to sort of cash out at a large multiple way, that would have may take you the next 5 or 10 years to reach. And then you can, guaranteed as an entrepreneur, you're already thinking about the next innovation thing that's not even in that same sort of sphere of that thing you built. And then you go and use that, to go do the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the evolution of the creator economy and what you see as the major developments or advancements there. And I'm also curious to frame the question in the context of marketing strategies and the most effective marketing strategies or investments as presently constructed. Because research tells us that we have attention spans of only about 7 seconds. So talk to me about the investments in marketing strategies and how it's related to the creator economy. What are your thoughts there?
I think we're at a really exciting time right now. We're about to see a huge shift in marketing that has never been around before. And like that 7-second rule you're talking about, classic, marketing knowledge. I think that or seeing something 7 times, like you have to see it multiple times before you make a purchase decision. I think a lot of that classic way of thinking is gone, because of the nature of how people are learning about product now is completely changed. And the industry hasn't yet matured to understand how that shift has happened and how to get involved in it. And the best example I use is Mr. Beast, who's the most followed YouTuber in the world. So there's a certain natural aspect that happens with that because of that. But it's the best example because he spent a couple of $1 million building a set to do Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, to do content, fun like chocolate rivers and giant Mentos in the soda and really funny, entertaining things that 100 million views happen on these videos, like massive, more than the Super Bowl sometimes. They're watching these videos, like huge audiences to watch pieces of entertainment. But what he did was he launched a snack brand, which his first product was a chocolate bar. So he's doing a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory piece of content with chocolate contests and things, but featuring this brand new brand that he has, Feastables, in this chocolate bar. And so what happened there, I think people underestimate exactly what that means, is what consumers now are getting entertained. They're watching a traditional piece of entertainment that they normally would watch from this creator. But now this creator has a product and they know he has a product. It's not a product placement that the previous sort of generation had with Instagram, where models would hold up a product and it was not really authentic, and you knew they were hawking product. And yeah, it worked for a little while, but this is different. This is now value of entertainment you're getting from that creator, and now those people getting that value want to support that value. And by supporting that value, when they're at the grocery store and they see that chocolate bar, they're going to buy it. One is, they like the creator and they whatever, but they want to give value back to the creator, subconsciously even, or even consciously, by supporting them by buying the product. And that level of connectivity from a brand to a consumer is unheard of in traditional marketing, to where you get the consumer to want to buy the product to support the brand. The closest example I would have is brands that get to the point of you putting a sticker in the back window of your car. Like if you're Nike and you want to put the swoosh on your car or whatever to show you support Nike, or some surfing brand or whatever, like brands that get to the point where it gives you sort of street cred or value by showing you're connected to that brand. The brand's done a good job of positioning themselves as having more emotional value than the product itself. And creators have the ability to inherently do that. And that is something that is just now we're at the beginning of. And I think as we start to see creators recognize this, and that's one of the things I'm doing with my new venture studio, is to partner with those top creators and celebrities who want to be entrepreneurs, who see the ability to do this and how to embed their brand within their entertainment and not make it feel like product placement, but part of naturally who they are. The value of that is massive. And pair that with product innovation and not just white labeling generic stuff. Now you have their ability to really scale these brands to be legacy income for them beyond sort of their 15 minutes or longer of fame, that they have. So, and a lot of creators want that. They know at some point they're going to want to move on to other things. They want that legacy income for themselves, their families, and by being able to have a brand that goes beyond who they are, that is one of the biggest shifts I see we're at the very beginning of, that over the next year is really going to take off.
Yeah, and Paul, I'm going to combine my last two questions because they're interconnected. Because throughout our conversation today, you really have brought up the importance of being nimble in business. And I'm curious to ask you to end our conversation about what it means to maximize being nimble in business, and how that relates to your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
Yeah, I think again, as an entrepreneur, you naturally have to be nimble because you're having to wear many hats and do a lot of different things and problem solve on a regular basis. So that translates, can translate into how your business culture is within the company. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that nimbleness happening, and there's a move away from needing to do the things the way they always have done and to be doing nimble. The challenge is you also have people who don't value the reasons why certain structure and systems have been put in place, because as an entrepreneur, there's so many ways you can make a mistake that can kill your business. That's why they fail. And so having partners, mentors, people who've seen that or can help you build a certain element of systemization and structure along with that nimbleness, that combination, I think, is the best solution. In terms of people remembering me for legacy and all that, I don't really care. It's not about me and any ego or vanity. I do my thing and I get excited by doing that. If it can grow things and solve problems, whatever they may be, that's what I enjoy. I'm not doing it for a pat on the back or recognition. Yeah, and even doing things like podcasts or to get more awareness for the businesses I'm doing. So I call it pimping myself out for the business. It's not about my own ego,
Well, it's all about moving a train of progress down the track, isn't it?
Well, and one of the other things that I would say, things doing like doing podcasts and stuff like that is, I used to just keep my head down and focus on my own business. And years ago, I don't know what sort of clicked. I got into doing more networking with local entrepreneur clubs and groups and university entrepreneurial centers and things like that, and found that through that networking, you end up with a big group of, could be anywhere from learning about a vendor, hiring an executive, helping somebody else out with their business, and all of a sudden they bring you a customer a year later, or there's just getting out there and being a part of a network, and which means helping people without looking for anything in return. The value of that, which is part of podcasts, it's people offering advice that may or may not fit for what they're doing, but it's part of what helps me as an entrepreneur, is hearing other people and hearing what's working, what's not working, and getting out there. So being a part of that discussion, yes, there could be people that be like, oh, I saw that guy, he was cool, and I need fulfillment services, great. Or it could be who knows what, but just being out there and part of it without expectations or a direct path of what's going to help what, you'll find is rewarding in areas you don't need to even predict. You just get out there and offer advice, support, help people, connect others together without even needing to ask for a commission or anything. That way of thinking, I've found, has been rewarding in a macro sense without having to worry about each micro interaction. You just do it as part of your nature as an entrepreneur, and you find that it builds your own like personal ecosystem of helping people, and they help you, you help them. This guy over here, maybe you didn't, or that one you did, or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're just building that personal ecosystem, and I think that's one of the great things that podcasts do is help people help each other and connect on that level.
Well, absolutely, my friend. And finally, Paul, tell me if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that, my friend?
LinkedIn is good. Paul Shrater, Shrater. If there is ways I can help with any of the companies we talked about today, for 3PL, it's minimusfulfillment.biz. For contract packaging, food, supplements, beauty, personal care, minimusproducts.biz. for TikTok marketing agency, digitalcommerceagency.com. So there's some other stuff I'm doing, but those would probably be the most applicable to a general business audience. PaulSchrater.com has my full bio.
Well, absolutely, my friend. Well, I want to thank you for first of all, your willingness to have such great business ambition and really paving a path for other entrepreneurs to find a pathway of both interest and creativity, my friend. Your work in the space is most appreciated, as is your time on my behalf this afternoon, and I want to thank you for being here. It's most appreciated.
No, thank you, Kevin. I love seeing your podcast, and you've got some great reviews of folks that are participating in what you're doing, and great, well thought out, well researched questions, which is always great for me, and especially things that are very clever and really tapping into things that can be helpful to others.